The morning rain drummed against the large windows of Bean There Coffee Shop in downtown Seattle. Ji-won Park pushed through the heavy glass door, shaking droplets from her dark hair. The familiar smell of roasted coffee beans and fresh pastries filled her nose. She loved this place because it was usually quiet at this hour. Most people were still rushing to work, not sitting around judging strangers. Ji-won chose her usual spot in the far corner. The small round table sat beneath a painting of mountains that reminded her of Korea. She placed her laptop bag on the chair across from her and sat down carefully. Her long sleeves covered her arms completely, just the way she planned it every morning. The barista, a young woman with bright blue hair, waved at her. "The usual, Ji-won?" "Yes, please. Large coffee, no sugar." Ji-won tried to smile, but it felt forced. She had been coming here for 6 months, and the staff knew her by name. Still, she never felt completely comfortable anywhere in public. While waiting for her coffee, Ji-won opened her laptop and began working on client files. She worked at a small office that helped veterans find jobs and housing. The work made her feel useful, but it also reminded her daily of things she tried to forget. A group of college students walked in, laughing loudly about something on their phones. There were 4 of them, 3 young men and 1 woman. They looked like they had all the confidence in the world. Ji-won remembered being that carefree once, before life taught her that people could be cruel about things they did not understand. The students sat at the table next to hers. Their backpacks hit the floor with heavy thuds and their voices carried across the small cafe. Ji-won tried to focus on her work, but their energy was hard to ignore. "I cannot believe Professor Kim gave us another essay," said one of the young men. He had short black hair and wore an expensive-looking jacket. "Like we already proved we can write." "Maybe if you actually showed up to class, Taemin, you would know what the essay is about," the young woman replied, rolling her eyes. Taemin laughed. "I show up, sometimes, when it matters." Ji-won glanced at them briefly. They seemed nice enough, just typical college students complaining about schoolwork. She turned back to her laptop screen and tried to concentrate on the veteran housing application she was reviewing. The barista brought her coffee in a large white mug. "Here you go. Working hard again today?" "Always something to do," Ji-won replied softly. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug, being extra careful to keep her sleeves in place. As she reached for her coffee, something went wrong. The mug was more full than usual, and when she lifted it, hot liquid spilled onto her lap. She jumped up quickly, grabbing napkins from the dispenser on the table. "Oh no," she said quietly, trying to clean the coffee from her jeans. In her hurry to clean up the mess, Ji-won forgot to be careful. She pushed her right sleeve up to keep it dry while she wiped at the spilled coffee. For just a moment, her forearm was completely visible. The tattoo stood out clearly against her pale skin. It was about 4 inches long and 2 inches wide, covering most of her forearm. The design was intricate and obviously professional. Dark blue ink formed the shape of an eagle with spread wings. Beneath the eagle, Korean characters were written in elegant script. Around the border, small symbols that looked military were carefully placed. Taemin noticed first. His eyes grew wide and he nudged his friend sitting next to him. "Dude, look at that," he whispered, but not quietly enough. The other students turned to stare. Ji-won felt their eyes on her immediately. Her face burned with embarrassment, and she quickly pulled her sleeve back down. But it was too late. They had all seen it. "Wow, that is a serious tattoo," said another young man at their table. "I wonder what it means." "Probably some gang thing," Taemin said with a smirk. "You know how some people try to look tough." Ji-won's heart started beating faster. She sat back down and tried to focus on cleaning up, but she could feel them still, watching her. "It looked military to me," the young woman said. "Maybe she was in the army or something." "Yeah, right," Taemin laughed. "She does not look like soldier material. Probably just got it to impress some guy. Girls do stuff like that all the time." His friends laughed along with him. The sound made Ji-won feel sick to her stomach. She had heard comments like this before, but they never got easier to hear. I bet she regrets it now, another student added. Good luck getting a real job with that thing on your arm. Maybe she can get it removed, Tae-min said loudly enough for Ji-won to hear clearly. I heard laser removal really hurts though. Serves her right for making bad choices. The group erupted in laughter again. Ji-won closed her laptop and stuffed it into her bag. Her hands were shaking slightly, but she tried to stay calm. She had dealt with this kind of thing many times before. As she stood to leave, Ji-won accidentally knocked her phone off the table. When she bent to pick it up, her sleeve rode up again slightly. This time, Tae-min got an even better look at the tattoo. Did you guys see those symbols? He whispered to his friends. Definitely trying too hard to look badass. What kind of woman gets a tattoo like that? Ji-won grabbed her phone and walked quickly toward the door. She could feel their eyes following her across the cafe. The familiar shame settled over her like a heavy blanket. This was exactly why she kept her arms covered. This was exactly why she chose quiet corners and avoided crowds. Just before she reached the door, she heard Tae-min say one more thing. Some people just have no respect for themselves. My mom would die if I came home with something like that. The words hit Ji-won like a physical blow. She pushed through the door and out into the rain. The cold drops felt good against her burning face. She walked quickly down the sidewalk, pulling her jacket tight around her body. As she walked away from the coffee shop, Ji-won thought about the tattoo hidden beneath her sleeve. Those college students had no idea what it really meant. They saw only what they wanted to see. Something to judge, something to make themselves feel superior. If only they knew the truth. If only they understood what she had done to earn that mark on her skin. But Ji-won had learned long ago that most people preferred their assumptions to the complicated truth. She would find a new coffee shop tomorrow. Ji-won's apartment was small but clean. The walls were painted white and she kept everything organized. She hung her wet jacket on a hook by the door and kicked off her shoes. The silence felt good after the noise and judgment at the coffee shop. She walked to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. Slowly, she rolled up her right sleeve. The tattoo looked back at her in the reflection. The eagle's wings seemed to spread wider in the mirror's light. The Korean characters below it were perfectly formed, each stroke meaning something important. Ji-won touched the tattoo gently with her left hand. The skin was smooth now, completely healed. But she remembered when it was fresh and tender. She remembered the day she earned the right to wear this mark. The memory came flooding back like it always did when she looked at the tattoo too long. She was 23 years old, serving as a combat medic with the combined Korean and American forces. The training exercise was supposed to be routine. They were working in the mountains near the border, practicing rescue operations. Ji-won was assigned to Alpha Team with 6 American soldiers and 3 Korean soldiers. The morning had started perfectly. Clear sky, good weather for helicopter training. Ji-won checked her medical supplies 3 times, making sure everything was ready. She always checked 3 times. Lives depended on being prepared. Staff Sergeant Rodriguez, the team leader, gathered everyone for the briefing. Today we practice mountain rescue under combat conditions, he said. The scenario is simple. Team Bravo will act as injured soldiers. We extract them under simulated enemy fire. Ji-won nodded along with the others. She had done this exercise many times before. Extract the wounded, provide medical care, get everyone to safety. Simple. But nothing went according to plan that day. They were halfway up the mountain when the real attack began. Not simulated. Real enemy fire from hidden positions. Someone had leaked information about the training exercise. The enemy knew exactly where they would be. Contact left, Rodriguez shouted as bullets started flying. Ji-won dropped behind a large rock with Private Johnson, a 19-year-old soldier from Texas. Johnson was scared but trying not to show it. They all were. The firefight lasted 20 minutes. When the shooting stopped, 7 members of their team were wounded. 3 were wounded badly. Rodriguez had been shot in the chest. 2 Korean soldiers were hit in the legs. Private Johnson was unconscious with a head injury. The helicopter that was supposed to extract them had been forced to retreat. No backup was coming for at least 2 hours. The wounded soldiers would not survive that long without immediate medical attention. Ji-won looked at the scene around her. Blood on the rocks, men calling for help, some barely breathing. This was not a training exercise anymore. This was real, and people were dying. She made a decision that would change her life forever. I need to get to Rodriguez, she told the remaining soldiers. But Rodriguez was 30 feet away, completely exposed to enemy fire. The shooters were still out there, waiting. Too dangerous, said Corporal Kim, one of the Korean soldiers. They will kill you. Ji-won looked at Rodriguez. He was losing too much blood. Without immediate surgery, he would die in the next 10 minutes. Cover me, she said, grabbing her medical bag. What happened next would be talked about in military circles for years. Ji-won ran through enemy fire not once but 4 times. Each time she reached another wounded soldier. Each time she dragged them back to safety behind the rocks. The enemy kept shooting at her. Bullets hit the ground inches from her feet. One bullet tore through her sleeve but missed her arm. Another shattered a rock next to her head, sending sharp pieces flying. But Ji-won did not stop. Could not stop. These men were counting on her. She performed emergency surgery on Rodriguez right there on the mountain with bullets still flying. Overhead, she removed the bullet from his chest with a knife in her bare hands. She stopped the bleeding and stabilized his breathing. Then she moved to Private Johnson. His head injury was serious, but she managed to reduce the swelling and keep him conscious. One by one, she treated all 7 wounded soldiers. When backup finally arrived 2 hours later, every single wounded soldier was alive. Every single one would make a full recovery. The memory faded as Ji-won heard her phone ringing in the living room. She pulled down her sleeve and walked to answer it. Hello? Ji-won, it is me. The voice belonged to her younger brother, Dong-ho. He was 25 and worked as a teacher in Portland. They talked every few days. Hi, Dong-ho. How are you? I am good. But you sound sad. What happened? Ji-won sat down on her small couch. Dong-ho always knew when something was wrong. They had been close since childhood, especially after their parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. Same old thing, Ji-won said. Someone saw the tattoo today. They made comments. Dong-ho sighed on the other end of the phone. What did they say this time? The usual. That I made bad choices. That I was trying to look tough. That I should get it removed. People are stupid, Dong-ho said angrily. They do not know what you did. They do not know what that tattoo represents. I know. But it still hurts. Ji-won, listen to me. That tattoo is not a mark of shame. It is a medal of honor. You saved 7 lives that day. 7 families got their sons and husbands back because of you. Ji-won touched the tattoo through her sleeve. Sometimes I think about getting it removed. It would make life easier. No, Dong-ho said firmly. Do not let ignorant people make you hide who you are. You are a hero, Ji-won. I am proud to be your brother. Our parents would be proud too. Tears started forming in Ji-won's eyes. I miss them. I miss them too. But they raised us to be strong. They raised us to do the right thing even when it is hard. After they hung up, Ji-won sat in her quiet apartment thinking about that day on the mountain. She thought about Rodriguez, who sent her Christmas cards every year with photos of his growing family. She thought about Private Johnson, who went to college after the army and became a teacher. All 7 men who were wounded that day had gone on to live full lives. All 7 had families now, children who existed because their fathers came home alive. The tattoo was not just ink on her skin. It was a reminder of the most important thing she had ever done. It represented courage, sacrifice, and the decision to risk everything for others. But the world only saw what it wanted to see. A woman with a tattoo, someone to judge, someone to whisper about. Ji-won looked at the tattoo one more time in the bathroom mirror before getting ready for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new judgment, new whispers. But tonight, she would remember the truth. The Veterans Support Center was buzzing with activity when Ji-won arrived for work the next morning. Located in a converted office building downtown, the center helped former military personnel find jobs, housing, and medical care. Ji-won had been working there for 2 years, and she loved helping other veterans rebuild their lives. Her desk sat near a large window that looked out onto the busy street below. She had decorated it with a small Korean flag, a photo of her and Dong-ho, and a coffee mug that said "World's Best Medic," a gift from her brother last Christmas. "Morning, Ji-won," called Hee-jin from across the room. Hee-jin was Ji-won's closest friend at work and one of the few people who knew her full military story. She was 32, married with 2 young children, and had served in the Air Force before becoming a social worker. "Good morning," Ji-won replied, settling into her chair. She turned on her computer and began reviewing the files of veterans she would be meeting with that day. The first appointment was with an older man named Robert Chen who needed help finding an apartment. The second was with Maria Santos, a young woman struggling to find work after leaving the Navy. Ji-won enjoyed these meetings because they reminded her that everyone had struggles, and small acts of help could make a big difference. Around 10 o'clock, Hee-jin walked over to Ji-won's desk holding an official-looking envelope. "This came in the mail for you," Hye-jin said. "Looks important?" Ji-won looked at the return address. It was from the Department of Defense. Her heart started beating faster. Official mail from the military always made her nervous, even though she had been out of service for 5 years. She opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a formal letter printed on military letterhead. As she read it, her eyes grew wide. "What is it?" Hee-jin asked, noticing Ji-won's expression. "It is an invitation," Ji-won said quietly, "to a reunion ceremony." The letter explained that Alpha Team was being honored for their actions during the mountain rescue operation 5 years ago. The ceremony would take place in Seattle in 2 weeks. All surviving team members were invited to attend, but what made Ji-won's hands shake was the next paragraph. The ceremony would be led by Navy SEAL Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell, who had become famous for his leadership in several international operations. Commander Mitchell had specifically requested to honor Alpha Team because their actions had inspired changes in military rescue training. "This is amazing," Hee-jin said after reading the letter. "They are giving you an official recognition ceremony." "I do not know if I should go," Ji-won said, putting the letter down on her desk. "What do you mean?" "Of course you should go. This is what you deserve." Ji-won looked out the window at the people walking on the street below. It will be a public ceremony. There will be cameras, reporters, other people watching. My tattoo will be visible in my dress uniform. Hee-jin sat down in the chair next to Ji-won's desk. "So what if people see your tattoo? Maybe it is time they learned what it really means. You know how people react when they see it. They make assumptions. They judge me before they know the truth. But this time will be different," Hee-jin said. "This time people will hear your real story. They will understand what you did." Ji-won picked up the letter and read it again. The ceremony would be held at the Seattle Convention Center. The mayor would be there. Local news stations would cover the event. Hundreds of people would attend. "I have been hiding for so long," Ji-won said. "It feels safer to stay quiet." Hee-jin leaned forward. "Ji-won, I have known you for 2 years. In that time, I have watched you help dozens of veterans rebuild their lives. You give them hope when they have none. You show them that their service mattered. That is different. That is just my job." "No, it is not just your job, it is who you are. You are someone who runs toward danger to help others. You did it on that mountain, and you do it every day here." Ji-won thought about the veterans she had counseled. Many of them struggled with similar feelings of being misunderstood or judged. She always told them to be proud of their service, to not let others' ignorance define them. "What if the same thing happens as always?" Ji-won asked. "What if people see the tattoo and make comments? Then you will handle it the same way you handled enemy fire," Hye-jin said firmly. With courage. Across town, Taemin was sitting in his journalism class at the University of Washington. He had almost forgotten about the woman with the tattoo from the coffee shop yesterday. Almost, but not completely. Something about her reaction had stayed with him. Professor Lee was discussing upcoming assignments when she mentioned a special opportunity. The city of Seattle is hosting a military recognition ceremony in 2 weeks, Professor Lee said. I need someone to cover it for our campus news blog. It would be good experience for anyone interested in journalism. Taimin raised his hand. What kind of ceremony is it? They are honoring a military unit that performed heroic actions during a training exercise. There will be high-ranking officers there, including a Navy SEAL commander. It should make for an interesting story. Taimin thought about his journalism portfolio. He needed more serious pieces to balance out his entertainment and sports articles. A military ceremony sounded professional and important. I will take the assignment, he said. Excellent. I will send you the details later today. Back at the Veterans Center, Ji-won was still staring at the invitation letter. Her computer screen showed the files of 3 more veterans she was supposed to meet with that afternoon. Each file told a story of service and sacrifice. Each person deserved respect and recognition. You always tell us that hiding from the truth does not make it go away, said a voice behind her. Ji-won turned around. It was Robert Chen, the veteran she had helped find housing last month. He was standing near her desk with a smile on his face. I heard you talking about a military ceremony, Robert said. Sounds like something important. It might be, Ji-won replied. In my experience, the important things are usually the scary things too, Robert said. But that does not mean we should avoid them. After Robert left, Hee-jin came back to Ji-won's desk. Have you decided? Ji-won looked at the letter one more time. She thought about the 7 men whose lives she had saved. She thought about Rodriguez and his Christmas cards. She thought about Private Johnson and his teaching career. She thought about all the veterans she had helped who were now living better lives. Yes, she said finally, I will go to the ceremony. Hee-jin smiled. Good. It is time people knew the truth about that tattoo. Ji-won folded the letter carefully and put it in her desk drawer. In 2 weeks, she would put on her dress uniform for the first time in 5 years. She would stand in front of hundreds of people with her tattoo visible to everyone. For the first time in a long time, she felt ready to stop hiding. The ceremony would change everything, though she did not know it yet. And neither did Taimin, who was already planning his coverage of what he expected to be a routine military event. Some stories, Ji-won thought, were worth the risk of telling. The Seattle Convention Center was buzzing with activity on the morning of the ceremony. Military flags hung from the ceiling, and rows of chairs faced a stage decorated with red, white, and blue banners. Security guards checked identification at every entrance while volunteers directed guests to their seats. Ji-won stood outside the main entrance wearing her dress uniform for the first time in 5 years. The dark blue fabric felt strange after so many years of civilian clothes. Her medals were polished and properly positioned on her chest. Most importantly, her tattoo was completely visible on her right forearm. She took a deep breath and walked through the doors. Inside, the convention center was filled with hundreds of people. Military families sat in the front rows, many wearing their own uniforms or military-themed clothing. Local politicians mingled near the stage, shaking hands and taking photos. News crews set up cameras at strategic positions around the room. Ji-won felt every eye on her as she walked to the section reserved for honored veterans. Some people stared openly at her tattoo. Others whispered to their companions and pointed in her direction. The familiar feeling of being judged settled over her shoulders like a heavy coat. An elderly woman sitting near the veterans section looked at Ji-won's tattoo and shook her head disapprovingly. A teenage boy pointed at the ink on her arm and said something to his mother that made her frown. 2 men in business suits near the back of the room stopped their conversation to stare at her. "Excuse me, are you supposed to be sitting here?" asked a middle-aged man in a Marine uniform. He was looking at Ji-won with suspicion, clearly doubting that someone with visible tattoos belonged in the honored veterans section. "Yes, sir," Ji-won replied quietly, showing him her invitation letter. "I am Corporal Ji-won Park, Alpha Team." The Marine read the letter, and his expression changed slightly, but Ji-won could tell he still had doubts. He stepped aside to let her pass, but she felt his eyes following her to her seat. Near the media section, Taemin was setting up his camera equipment with his cameraman, a junior student named Kyle. Taemin had arrived early to get the best shots for his story. He expected this to be a routine assignment about military ceremony and patriotism, as he adjusted his camera lens. Taemin noticed a familiar face in the crowd. It was the woman from the coffee shop, the one with the tattoo that he and his friends had mocked. She was wearing a military uniform and sitting in the section reserved for honored veterans. "No way," Taemin said to himself. "What?" Kyle asked, looking through his own camera viewfinder. "That woman over there," Taemin pointed toward Ji-won. "She was at my coffee shop yesterday. She has this huge tattoo on her arm." Kyle zoomed in with his camera. "Yeah, I can see it. Pretty bold to wear a tattoo like that to a military ceremony." Taemin laughed. "I knew she was fake. Probably bought that uniform online or something. Real military people do not get tattoos like that." "Should we film her?" Kyle asked. "Definitely. This might be the real story here. Someone pretending to be a veteran at an official military ceremony. My journalism professor will love this." Taemin began filming Ji-won from across the room. He zoomed in on her tattoo, capturing the eagle design in Korean characters. In his mind, he was already writing the story about fake veterans and the people who pretended to be heroes. Meanwhile, Ji-won tried to focus on the program in her hands, instead of the stares and whispers around her. The ceremony would begin with the national anthem, followed by speeches from local officials. Then Commander Mitchell would present the unit recognition awards. A young soldier sat down next to Ji-won. He looked nervous and kept checking his uniform to make sure everything was perfect. "First time at something like this?" Ji-won asked gently. "Yes, ma'am, I am Private Park Min-soo from the Honor Guard. I am supposed to help present the colors today." "You will do fine," Ji-won said. "Just remember your training." Private Park noticed Ji-won's tattoo, and his eyes widened. "That is an amazing tattoo, ma'am. What does it mean?" Before Ji-won could answer, an older veteran sitting behind them leaned forward. "Young lady," the older man said sternly, "tattoos like that do not belong at a military ceremony. This is supposed to be a respectful event." Ji-won felt her face burn with embarrassment. Private Park looked confused, clearly not understanding why the tattoo was a problem. "Sir, I appreciate your concern," Ji-won said quietly. "But I have every right to be here." "Rights?" the older veteran scoffed. "Real veterans earn their place through honor and discipline, not through ink and rebellion." Several people nearby turned to watch the confrontation. Taemin zoomed in closer with his camera, excited to capture what he thought was drama involving a fake veteran. Just then, a woman in a Navy uniform approached their section. She was Commander Sarah Williams, the ceremony coordinator. "Corporal Park?" Commander Williams asked, looking directly at Ji-won. "Yes, ma'am. Commander Mitchell would like to speak with you before the ceremony begins. Would you please come with me?" Ji-won stood up and followed Commander Williams toward the backstage area. As they walked, she heard the older veteran behind her say, to his companion, "I told you she does not belong here." Taemin filmed their entire walk to the backstage area. "This is perfect," he whispered to Kyle. "They are probably going to kick her out for impersonating a veteran." Backstage, Ji-won found herself in a small room filled with other Alpha Team members. She recognized most of them immediately, even though 5 years had passed. There was Rodriguez, now a civilian but still built like a soldier. Johnson was there too, wearing glasses and looking more like the teacher he had become. "Ji-won!" Rodriguez called out when he saw her. He walked over and gave her a big hug. "It has been too long." "Too long," Ji-won agreed, feeling genuinely happy for the first time all day. Johnson joined them, along with the other team members. They spent several minutes catching up, sharing stories about their civilian lives and families. No one mentioned Ji-won's tattoo because they all understood what it meant. "I was worried you might not come," Rodriguez said. "I know you prefer to stay out of the spotlight." I almost did not, Jiwon admitted. People still react badly when they see the tattoo. Their problem, not yours, said Sergeant Kim Woo-jin, one of the Korean soldiers who had been wounded that day. You saved my life. I do not care what anyone thinks about your tattoo. Commander Mitchell entered the room at that moment. He was exactly as Jiwon remembered, tall, confident with kind eyes that missed nothing. His uniform was perfect, and his chest was covered with ribbons and medals from years of distinguished service. Alpha Team, he said with a smile, it is an honor to see you all again. Everyone stood at attention out of respect, but Commander Mitchell quickly put them at ease. Today is about recognizing what you accomplished together, he said. What you did on that mountain changed how we train our rescue teams. You saved lives that day, and your actions continue to save lives today. He looked directly at Jiwon. Corporal Park, I want you to know that your actions under fire were among the most courageous I have ever witnessed. You are the reason these men are here today with their families. Jiwon felt tears forming in her eyes. Thank you, sir. I was just doing my job. No, Commander Mitchell said firmly. You went far beyond your job. You risked everything to save your teammates. That kind of courage deserves to be recognized publicly. Out in the main hall, the ceremony was about to begin. Hundreds of people had taken their seats, including many who had stared and whispered about Jiwon's tattoo. Taemin had his cameras ready, still convinced he was about to expose a fake veteran. None of them knew they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of heroism forever. The lights dimmed, and Commander Williams took the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of colors and our national anthem. The ceremony was about to begin, and Jiwon's life was about to change forever. The national anthem filled the Seattle Convention Center as hundreds of people stood with their hands over their hearts. Jiwon sang along quietly, her voice mixing with the crowd around her. When the music ended, everyone sat down and turned, their attention to the stage. Commander Williams stepped up to the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special ceremony, honoring the brave men and women who serve our country with distinction. Today, we recognize Alpha Team for their extraordinary actions during a joint training exercise that became a real combat situation. The audience applauded politely. Jiwon could see Taemin in the media section, his camera focused on the stage. She had no idea he was the same person who had mocked her tattoo at the coffee shop. Before we begin the main presentation, Commander Williams continued, I would like to introduce our guest speaker, Navy SEAL Lieutenant Commander James Mitchell. The applause grew louder as Commander Mitchell walked onto the stage. He looked impressive in his dress uniform, every medal and ribbon perfectly placed. His presence commanded immediate respect from everyone in the room. Thank you, Commander Mitchell said into the microphone. His voice was strong and clear, carrying easily to the back of the large room. I am honored to be here today to recognize some of the finest soldiers I have ever had the privilege to know. He paused and looked directly at the section where Jiwon and her teammates were sitting. 5 years ago, Alpha Team was conducting a routine training exercise in the mountains near our border. What started as a simple rescue simulation became a life-or-death situation when enemy forces launched a surprise attack. The room grew quiet. Even the children in the audience seemed to sense that something important was being said. When the shooting started, Alpha Team found themselves outnumbered and outgunned. 7 members of the team were wounded, some critically. Their helicopter evacuation was forced to retreat under heavy fire. Backup was hours away. Commander Mitchell moved away from the podium and closer to the edge of the stage. In situations like this, people show their true character. Some freeze with fear. Some run for safety. Some do only what is required of them. He looked directly at Jiwon. And some do the impossible. Taemin zoomed in on Jiwon with his camera. He was still expecting her to be exposed as a fraud, but something about Commander Mitchell's tone made him pay closer attention. I want to tell you about one member of Alpha Team, Commander Mitchell continued, a combat medic who made a decision that day that saved 7 lives. The audience was completely silent now. Even the babies had stopped crying. When the attack began, this medic could have stayed behind cover and waited for help. That would have been the safe choice. The smart choice, some might say. Commander Mitchell's voice grew stronger. Instead, this soldier made 4 separate runs through active enemy fire to reach wounded teammates. 4 times, enemy bullets hit the ground, inches from her feet. 4 times she ignored her own safety to drag wounded soldiers to cover. A murmur went through the crowd. Several people looked around trying to figure out who the commander was talking about. But rescuing her teammates was only the beginning, Commander Mitchell said. This medic then performed emergency surgery on a soldier with a bullet wound to the chest. She operated with basic field equipment while enemy fire continued overhead. She removed the bullet with a combat knife in her bare hands. The elderly woman who had disapproved of Jiwon's tattoo earlier was now listening intently. The man who had questioned Jiwon's right to sit in the veterans section looked confused and concerned. She saved that soldier's life, Commander Mitchell said. Then she moved to the next wounded soldier and the next and the next. For 2 hours while under intermittent enemy fire, she provided life-saving medical care to 7 critically wounded men. Taemin lowered his camera slightly. This story was not what he had expected to hear. When backup finally arrived, every single wounded soldier was alive and stable. Every single one made a full recovery. Every single one went home to their families. The audience was completely focused on Commander Mitchell's words now. No one was looking at their phones or whispering to their neighbors. The medic I am describing was 23 years old at the time. She had been in the military for less than 2 years. She weighed barely 120 pounds. But her courage under fire was greater than that of soldiers with decades of experience. Commander Mitchell paused and scanned the audience. Her actions that day changed how we train combat medics. Her techniques are now taught in military medical schools around the world. The tactical rescue procedures she developed under fire have been used to save hundreds of additional lives in the years since. The room was so quiet that Jiwon could hear her own heartbeat. She felt hundreds of eyes searching the crowd, trying to identify the hero Commander Mitchell was describing. This soldier was awarded our unit's highest honor for her actions that day. She earned the right to wear a special tattoo that marks her as one of the most courageous people I have ever known. At the word tattoo, many people in the audience turned to look at Jiwon. The pieces were starting to come together for some of them. Taemin felt his stomach drop. The woman he had mocked, the woman he had assumed was a fake veteran with a meaningless tattoo, was the hero Commander Mitchell was describing. Ladies and gentlemen, Commander Mitchell said, his voice filled with pride and respect, I present to you Combat Medic Corporal Jiwon Park. The commander extended his hand toward Jiwon's section. Every eye in the room turned to look at her. Jiwon felt frozen in her seat. This was the moment she had been dreading and hoping for at the same time. Slowly, she stood up. The room erupted in thunderous applause. People jumped to their feet, clapping and cheering. The sound was deafening and went on for several minutes. Commander Mitchell waited for the applause to quiet down before continuing. Corporal Park, would you please join me on stage? Jiwon's legs felt weak as she walked down the aisle toward the stage. Every step felt like it took forever. People reached out to pat her on the back or shake her hand as she passed. The elderly woman who had disapproved of her earlier was now clapping with tears in her eyes. When Jiwon reached the stage, Commander Mitchell helped her up the steps. Standing beside him under the bright lights, she could see the entire audience clearly. Hundreds of faces looked back at her with respect and admiration. Corporal Park, Commander Mitchell said into the microphone, on behalf of a grateful nation and the 7 soldiers whose lives you saved, I want to say thank you. He turned to face her directly. The tattoo on your arm is not just ink. It is a badge of honor earned through the highest form of service. It represents courage, sacrifice, and the willingness to risk everything for others. Commander Mitchell's voice carried clearly throughout the silent room. Every person in this room should feel privileged to be in the presence of such a hero. In the media section, Taemin sat in stunned silence, his camera forgotten in his lap. The story he had planned to write about fake veterans had just become something entirely different. The woman he had judged so harshly was standing on stage being honored by one of the most respected military officers in the country. He thought about his cruel comments at the coffee shop and felt sick to his stomach. On stage, Ji-won looked out at the crowd of faces staring back at her with newfound respect. For the first time in years, she was not hiding her tattoo. For the first time in years, people were seeing her for who she really was. The moment she had feared for so long had become the moment that would change everything. Commander Mitchell stepped back from the microphone and turned to face Ji-won directly. The entire convention center was silent, watching and waiting. Under the bright stage lights, Ji-won's tattoo was clearly visible to everyone in the room. "Corporal Park," Commander Mitchell said in a voice that carried throughout the hall. "It has been the greatest honor of my military career to serve alongside you." Then something happened that no one expected. Commander Mitchell, a decorated Navy SEAL with 20 years of service, slowly raised his right hand to his forehead in a perfect military salute. The salute was not just a gesture. It was a sign of the deepest respect that one service member could show another. For a senior officer to salute an enlisted soldier in this way was extraordinary. Your courage under fire and your dedication to saving lives represents everything we hope to be as warriors and as human beings, Commander Mitchell said, holding the salute. The room was completely silent for a moment. Then something amazing happened. Rodriguez stood up in the audience and saluted Ji-won. Then Johnson stood and saluted. One by one, every veteran in the room rose to their feet and rendered the same honor to Ji-won that Commander Mitchell had shown. The sight was incredible. Dozens of men and women in uniform standing and saluting the small woman on the stage. The respect in the room was so powerful that many people in the audience began to cry. Ji-won felt overwhelmed by the moment. She had spent 5 years hiding her tattoo, enduring whispers and judgment from strangers who did not understand. Now she stood before hundreds of people who finally knew the truth. She returned Commander Mitchell's salute with tears streaming down her face. The audience erupted in applause again, even louder than before. People were standing, cheering, and many were wiping tears from their eyes. The elderly woman who had shaken her head at Ji-won's tattoo earlier was now applauding enthusiastically, clearly embarrassed by her earlier judgment. In the media section, Taemin sat frozen in his chair. His camera lay unused in his lap while he stared at the scene unfolding on stage. The woman he had mocked ruthlessly was being honored as a genuine hero by some of the most respected military officers in the country. He thought about his comments at the coffee shop. Probably some gang thing. Good luck getting a real job with that thing on your arm. What kind of woman gets a tattoo like that? His stomach felt sick as he remembered his cruel laughter and the way Ji-won had fled the coffee shop in shame. He had been so confident in his judgment, so sure that he understood what her tattoo meant. Kyle, his cameraman, noticed that Taemin had stopped filming. "Dude, why did you stop recording?" Kyle whispered. "This is amazing footage." Taemin could not answer. He was too busy trying to process what he had just witnessed. On stage, Commander Mitchell was continuing his presentation. "The tattoo that Corporal Park wears is not something that can be bought or copied," he announced to the crowd. "It can only be earned through the highest level of service and sacrifice. Each symbol in the design represents a life saved. Each line of Korean text tells the story of courage under fire." He gestured toward Ji-won's tattoo, which was clearly visible under the stage lights. "This tattoo is a medal of honor worn on the skin instead of the chest. Anyone who sees it should feel privileged to be in the presence of such heroism." The applause continued for several more minutes. When it finally quieted down, Commander Mitchell presented Ji-won with an official commendation certificate and a medal recognizing her service. As the ceremony concluded, people began moving around the convention center, talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. Many approached Ji-won to shake her hand and thank her for her service. The elderly woman who had earlier disapproved of the tattoo waited patiently in line to speak with Ji-won. "My dear," she said when her turn came, "I owe you an apology. I made terrible assumptions about you based on your appearance. I am ashamed of my behavior." "It is okay," Ji-won replied kindly. "Many people have the same reaction. They do not know the story behind the tattoo." "Well, I know now," the woman said firmly, "and I will never judge someone like that again." Similar conversations were happening all around the room. People who had stared and whispered were now approaching Ji-won with respect and admiration. Tae-min watched from across the room, still unable to move from his seat. Finally, Kyle shook his shoulder. "Come on, man, let's go interview some people for your article." "I cannot write this story," Tae-min said quietly. "What do you mean?" "This is perfect. You have got a real hero story here." "You do not understand," Tae-min said, finally standing up. "I know her. I said terrible things about her tattoo before I knew what it meant." Kyle looked confused, but Tae-min was already walking toward the stage area where Ji-won was still talking to well-wishers. Tae-min waited until the crowd around Ji-won had thinned out before approaching her. His hands were shaking slightly as he walked over to where she stood talking with Rodriguez and Johnson. "Excuse me," he said quietly. Ji-won turned to look at him. Recognition flashed in her eyes immediately. "You were at the coffee shop yesterday," she said. "Yes," Tae-min replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I was." Rodriguez and Johnson sensed the tension and stepped back slightly, but remained close enough to support Ji-won if needed. "I came over to apologize," Tae-min said, looking directly at Ji-won. "I said horrible things about you and your tattoo. I made assumptions that were completely wrong." Ji-won studied his face. She could see that he was genuinely upset and ashamed. "Had no idea what your tattoo really meant," Tae-min continued. "I thought I was being clever and funny with my friends, but I was just being cruel to someone I did not know anything about." "Why are you apologizing now?" Ji-won asked. "Because I learned something today," Tae-min said. "I learned that judging people based on their appearance makes me the kind of person I never want to be." He paused and looked around the room at all the people who were still talking excitedly about the ceremony. "I am a journalism student," Itu said. "I am supposed to seek the truth and tell people's real stories. But yesterday I decided your story without even asking what it was." Ji-won was quiet for a moment, thinking about his words. "What will you do differently now?" she asked. "I want to write about what happened here today," Tae-min said. "Not just the ceremony, but about how wrong it is to judge people without knowing their stories. Maybe I can help other people understand what I learned." Ji-won looked at Rodriguez and Johnson, who both nodded their approval. "Okay," she said to Tae-min. "You can write about today, but I want you to include something in your story." "What?" "I want you to write that this tattoo is not the only one like it. There are other veterans walking around with marks on their skin that tell stories of service and sacrifice. People need to stop assuming they know what those marks mean." Tae-min nodded eagerly. "I will include that. I promise." As people began leaving the convention center, Ji-won walked outside into the Seattle sunshine. For the first time in 5 years, she rolled up her sleeves completely, letting her tattoo show without shame or fear. Yejin was waiting for her by the entrance. "How do you feel?" Yejin asked. Ji-won looked down at her tattoo, then back at her friend. "Free," she said simply. Behind them, Tae-min was already on his phone with his journalism professor, completely changing the story he planned to write. Instead of an article about a military ceremony, he would write about the danger of judging others and the hidden heroes walking among us. The story that began with cruel laughter in a coffee shop had ended with respect, understanding, and a promise to do better. Ji-won's tattoo would never again be something she felt she needed to hide. It was, as Commander Mitchell had said, a badge of honor worn on the skin instead of the chest, and now the whole world knew what it really meant.